Last night, I was sitting in a restaurant in Crescent City, Florida called the Lakeside. Nothing unusual, just a Rotary Awards dinner, a plate of prime rib, and a wall of windows overlooking Lake Crescent. Nobody was there to watch wildlife, nobody had paid for a nature tour, it was just dinner. Then somebody pointed out what looked like a log floating past the windows. A second later the log moved. Turns out it was a pretty healthy-sized alligator cruising along the shoreline. Now Lake Crescent is 13 miles long, so seeing a gator isn't exactly headline news around here. In Florida, alligators are basically part of the landscaping, but then something happened that stopped every conversation in the room. A huge, dark shape appeared in the water just outside the windows. Then another. Then another. Pretty soon everyone at the table had forgotten about dinner and was staring out at the lake. There were manatees everywhere. Not one. Not two. At least 15 of them. Wild manatees grazing on underwater vegetation maybe 10 yards from where we were eating. No fences, no tanks, no handlers, no scheduled animal encounter. No signs advertising a wildlife attraction, just a random Tuesday night in Florida. And standing there watching them, I realized something. The best wildlife experiences in Florida usually aren't planned. They happen when you accidentally put yourself in the right place at exactly the right time. That's what this trip is about. Not finding guaranteed animal encounters, not visiting zoos, not checking boxes on a top 10 list. We're going to travel across Florida and visit some of the places that give you the best chance of experiencing the real thing. The places where nature still runs the schedule. Because if you're patient, and a little lucky, you never know what's going to swim, walk, fly, or crawl into view. I'm Noah Adams, your Oddity Atlas tour guide. Let's hit the road. The funny thing about last night's manatees is that nobody went looking for them, they just showed up. That's Florida at its best. So this morning we're heading south to a place where your odds of seeing manatees go from lucky to almost guaranteed. Blue Spring State Park. If you've never seen a manatee before, Blue Spring is where I'd start. The first time I came here I figured maybe I'd see a handful. Instead I looked into the spring run and realized there were manatees everywhere. Hundreds of them. Which, by the way, is considerably more manatees than the 15 that completely derailed my dinner last night. The water here is so clear, it almost looks fake. From the boardwalk you can watch mothers and calves drifting through the spring. Massive adults resting in the warm water. Fish weaving between them. Turtles sunning themselves nearby. It's one of those places where you spend 10 minutes planning to leave, and then realize you've been standing there for an hour. And the best part? You don't need a boat. You don't need special gear. You just show up and start walking. While you're here, spend some time exploring D-Land. Great little downtown, local restaurants, coffee shops, historic buildings. Exactly the kind of place most Florida visitors never see. Now let's keep moving, because if Blue Spring belongs to the manatees, the Everglades belong to the dinosaurs. Every tourist who comes to Florida wants to see an alligator. The Everglades basically responds with, "How many would you like?" The first time I walked the Anhinga Trail, I couldn't believe how much wildlife was packed into one place. Alligators sunning themselves beside the trail. Birds everywhere. Herons, egrets, anhingas, wood storks, sometimes so close you don't even need a zoom lens. And unlike a zoo, none of these animals are here for your entertainment. You're visiting their world. Which somehow makes every sighting feel more meaningful. And here's the thing most visitors never realize about the Everglades. The alligators are the celebrities, but they're only a tiny part of what's actually living out here. The Everglades is one of the largest wilderness areas east of the Mississippi River. Millions of acres of sawgrass marshes, cypress swamps, hardwood hammocks, mangrove forests, rivers, lakes, and hidden ponds stretching farther than most people can imagine. You could spend a lifetime exploring it, and never see the same place twice. For anglers, this place is basically paradise. One cast might bring in a bluegill, the next might be a largemouth bass, and if you're lucky, or unlucky depending on how much drag your reel has, you might hook into a long nosegar that looks like it escaped from the age of dinosaurs. Some of these fish have been swimming in Florida waters for millions of years. Then there are the animals most visitors never see. Black bears still roam parts of South Florida. They're usually shy and want absolutely nothing to do with people. The same goes for Florida panthers. In fact, if you somehow manage to see a panther in the wild, consider yourself incredibly lucky because there is a very good chance that dozens of panthers have already seen you and decided you weren't worth the trouble. The Everglades is also home to white-tailed deer, and some of the deer found in South Florida seem almost miniature compared to what many people are used to seeing in other states. They're adapted to life in wetlands and thick vegetation where being smaller can actually be an advantage. But one of the strangest things about the Everglades isn't native at all. It's the fish. Over the years, tropical fish farms across South Florida were flooded by hurricanes and severe storms. Other species were released by aquarium owners who thought they were doing the fish a favor. The result is one of the most colorful freshwater fish communities you'll find anywhere in North America. Walk along canals and waterways, and you might spot guppies flashing near the shoreline. Mollies, swordtails, bright African cichlids, tiny tetras, danios, even angelfish. It can feel less like Florida and more like somebody poured an entire aquarium store into the wilderness. For aquarium hobbyists, the Everglades has become famous for this reason. In some locations, people legally collect certain non-native species for their home aquariums. One minute you're standing in a swamp looking for alligators. The next you're staring into crystal clear water, watching fish that look like they belong in the Amazon or an African rift lake. That's the Everglades. Every time you think you've figured it out, it shows you something completely different. If you're already down here, spend some time in Homestead, try some fresh tropical fruit, explore the agricultural side of South Florida, or continue all the way to Florida Bay for sunset. From the swamps of South Florida, we're heading back toward the Space Coast, because there aren't many places on Earth where you can watch a bald eagle and a rocket launch on the same day. Merritt Island feels like somebody accidentally combined a wildlife refuge with a science fiction movie. The famous Black Point Wildlife Drive winds through wetlands absolutely packed with life. Alligators, roseate spoonbills, herons, egrets, osprey, and enough birds to keep photographers happy for years. Even if you've never cared about birdwatching before, this place might change your mind. Nearby you've got Cocoa Beach, the Kennedy Space Center, fresh seafood, and some of the best sunrises in Florida. Now, let's head inland, because Florida has one surprise left that catches almost everybody off guard. Wild bison. Seriously, the first time somebody told me Florida had wild bison I thought they were confusing us with Wyoming. But there they are, along with wild horses. As we leave the wetlands behind and head north toward Gainesville, the landscape begins to change. The forests open up, the horizon stretches farther, and eventually you arrive at one of the strangest places in Florida. Payne's Prairie Preserve State Park. If you've never been here before, the first view can be a little shocking. Most people picture Florida as beaches, palm trees, and swamps. Then suddenly you're standing above a prairie that looks like it belongs somewhere out west. More than 20,000 acres of open grassland, wetlands, lakes, and forests spread out in every direction. The prairie itself exists because of a massive natural basin that has been filling and draining for thousands of years. The result is an ecosystem unlike almost anywhere else in the state, and wildlife absolutely loves it. The best way to experience Payne's Prairie is to slow down. Climb the observation tower. Bring binoculars. Watch the horizon. This isn't the kind of place where animals line up beside the trail waiting for tourists. It's the kind of place where patience gets rewarded. You might spot wild horses grazing in the distance. You might see bison moving slowly across the prairie. Sandhill cranes call from the wetlands. Hawks circle overhead. And every now and then, you'll have one of those moments where the entire landscape feels untouched, like you're looking at Florida before highways and subdivisions arrived. For photographers, birdwatchers, and anyone who simply enjoys being outdoors, Payne's Prairie is one of the most underrated destinations in the state. And unlike some famous Florida attractions, you don't need reservations, expensive tickets, or perfect timing. You just need a little patience and a willingness to explore. Get here early. Trust me, the sunrise alone is worth the drive. And when you're done, Gainesville is right next door with museums, restaurants, springs, and plenty of ways to spend the rest of the day. Our next stop might be the most beautiful place on this entire trip. Corkscrew Swamp feels ancient. The boardwalk winds through towering cypress trees that were already old before most American cities existed. Everything slows down here. You hear every bird call, every splash, every rustle in the leaves. You start noticing things you'd normally walk right past. An owl staring from a branch, a turtle sunning itself, an alligator hidden in plain sight. This isn't the Florida of billboards and highways. This is the Florida that was here first. While you're in the area, spend some time exploring Naples and the Gulf Coast, watch the sunset, walk the beach, and keep an eye on the water for dolphins. Our final stop brings us back to the animal that started this entire journey, the Manatees. By now, we've seen manatees from boardwalks, alligators in swamps, birds in wetlands, and bison on the prairie. But our final major stop takes us into a place that almost doesn't seem real: Crystal River. If somebody showed you photos of these springs without telling you where they were, you'd probably guess the Caribbean. The water is unbelievably clear. In some places, visibility stretches for dozens of feet. Sunlight pours through the spring water and turns everything shades of blue and green that look digitally enhanced. They're not. This is what it actually looks like. And while manatees may be the stars here, the springs themselves are the real attraction. Kayaking through Crystal River feels like floating through liquid glass. Every fish, every turtle, every patch of underwater vegetation is visible beneath you. Sometimes you'll spend an hour paddling and feel like you're flying rather than floating. Then there are the springs themselves. Three Sisters. Springs might be one of the most beautiful natural locations in Florida. The water emerges from deep underground at a constant temperature year-round, creating an oasis that attracts wildlife and visitors alike. And unlike many wildlife destinations where you spend most of your time hoping to spot something, Crystal River gives you incredible scenery even when no animals appear. Then suddenly a manatee glides beneath your kayak, or surfaces beside your paddle, or rolls lazily through the spring run without the slightest concern that you're there. That's what makes the experience unforgettable. The animals aren't performing. They're not interacting because they're trained. You're simply sharing the water with them for a few moments before they continue on with their day. And somehow, that's far more memorable than any staged encounter could ever be. Crystal River is one of the best places in the world to experience these incredible animals. The springs are crystal clear, the water is beautiful, and even when the wildlife isn't cooperating, it's still a fantastic place to paddle, snorkel, or explore. But when the manatees do show up, you'll never forget it. They're massive, gentle, curious, and somehow even more impressive in person than they are in photos. You know, thinking back to those manatees outside the lakeside, there's something important about that moment. Nobody bought a wildlife package. Nobody booked a special encounter. Nobody even expected to see anything. We were just sitting in a restaurant eating dinner. That's the secret. The goal isn't finding animals. The goal is finding places where animals still live wild enough to surprise you. And Florida still has a lot of those places. If you slow down. Silver Springs bonus trip. Before we finish this journey, there's one more place I can't leave out. Silver Springs. Long before Florida became famous for theme parks, people traveled here to see something that seemed impossible. Water so clear that boats appeared to float in midair. And honestly, it still feels that way today. Silver Springs is one of the largest artesian spring systems in the world. Millions of gallons of crystal clear water flow from underground every single day. The most famous way to experience it is aboard the glass-bottom boats. These boats have been operating here for generations, and for good reason. Looking through the glass is like peering through a giant aquarium window into an entire underwater world. Fish drift through the springs, turtles move across the bottom, ancient limestone formations appear beneath the boat, and because the water is so clear, visibility can be absolutely incredible. But if you really want to immerse yourself in the experience, rent a kayak. Paddling through Silver Springs is one of the great wildlife adventures in Florida. Monkeys sometimes appear in the trees along the riverbanks. Manatees occasionally visit. River otters patrol the shoreline. Turtles cover fallen logs. Birds seem to be everywhere. The spring run winds through forests and wetlands that feel surprisingly wild, considering how close they are to civilization. It's one of those places where every bend in the river reveals something new. A heron standing motionless in the shallows, an osprey diving for fish, a family of turtles stacked on a log like they're posing for a group photo. And perhaps more than any place we've visited on this trip, Silver Springs captures the spirit of old Florida. Clear water, wildlife, beautiful scenery, and the feeling that nature is still the main attraction. If you've never been, put it on your list. You won't regret it. You know, thinking back to those manatees outside the lakeside, there's something important about that moment. Nobody bought a wildlife package. Nobody booked a special encounter. Nobody even expected to see anything. We were just sitting in a restaurant eating dinner. That's the secret. The goal isn't finding animals. The goal is finding places where animals still live wild enough to surprise you. And Florida still has a lot of those places. If you slow down, if you get off the interstate, if you take the side road, if you spend a little extra time on the boardwalk, sooner or later Florida usually rewards you. Maybe it's a manatee, maybe it's a dolphin, maybe it's an eagle, maybe it's a giant alligator that everyone mistakes for a floating log. You never really know, and that's what makes it fun. So if you're planning a Florida trip, skip the cages, skip the staged encounters, skip the places where nature only appears at 2:30 for the scheduled feeding. Instead, visit the springs, walk the boardwalks, drive the wildlife refuges, explore the Everglades, sit beside a lake, watch the water, and give Florida a chance to surprise you. If you enjoyed this adventure, subscribe to Oddity Atlas and join me for the next road trip. And tell me in the comments about the most unforgettable wildlife encounter you've ever had. Because after last night, I'm convinced some of the best Florida stories happen when you least expect them. I'm Noah Adams, and I'll see you somewhere wild.